All right, let's dive into a really powerful idea from Morgan Housel's book, The Psychology of Money. Seriously, this is one of those concepts that could completely flip how you think about your finances. It all boils down to this. When it comes to money, being reasonable is so much more important than being technically rational. And to really get why, we've got to start with this truly bizarre story from the world of medicine. Yeah, you read that right. I'm not kidding. A Nobel Prize-winning doctor decided the best way to cure one deadly disease was to infect his patients with another deadly disease. It sounds completely nuts, I know, but stick with me here because the logic behind this seemingly crazy idea reveals something fundamental about how all of us make big decisions.
So, what on earth was going on? How did this even happen? Let's unpack this strange tale and see what it can teach us, not just about medicine, but about our own human nature.
Okay, so picture this. It's the early 1900s. A doctor named Wagner Jaureg notices something odd. Back then, neurosyphilis was basically a death sentence. But he saw that sometimes patients who got sick with something else, something that gave them a really high fever, they would actually get better. So he had this wild idea. Around 1917, he started giving patients malaria on purpose, just to trigger those intense fevers. It was a huge risk, for sure. But guess what? It worked. He basically doubled the survival rate. And for this, he didn't get shut down. He won the Nobel Prize.
And this all brings us to what's called the fever paradox. Think about it. Biologically, a fever is a perfectly rational defense mechanism. Your body is cranking up the heat to cook the bad guys, right? But let's be real. When you have a fever, what's the first thing you do? You reach for the Tylenol. You want it gone. Not because it's the most rational thing for your immune system, but because fevers feel awful. It's the most reasonable thing for your comfort.
Okay, so let's really dig into this difference because it's the whole ballgame. Understanding rational versus reasonable is the absolute key to making smarter decisions, especially when it comes to our money. So let's just lay it out. Rational thinking is what looks good on a spreadsheet. It's pure math, it's cold, it's logical. It completely ignores the messy human stuff, like fear or excitement or just wanting to sleep at night. Reasonable thinking, on the other hand, embraces the fact that we're humans. It's about finding a strategy that's realistic and that you can actually live with, one that accounts for the fact that, yeah, our feelings play a big role in what we do. And here is the big punchline for your finances. A financial plan that's mathematically perfect but makes you miserable is, frankly, a useless plan. The goal isn't to be a robot who makes the most rational choice every time. The goal is to find a reasonable strategy that you can stick with for the long haul, through the good times and the bad. Which brings us to what we could call the stickiness factor. Your ability to just hang in there, to stick with your plan when the market gets scary or when you just get bored. That is probably the single most powerful tool you have for building wealth over time. And if you want proof, just look at the data. It's pretty incredible. If you invested in the US stock market for any random one-year period, historically, you had about a 68% chance of making money. Not too shabby. But stretch that out to any 10-year period, your odds jump way up to 88%. And what about for any 20-year period? 100%. Let that sink in for a second. In the entire history of the US stock market, there has never been a 20-year period where you would have lost money. That's the magic of compounding at work, but it has one secret ingredient. You have to give it time. So the takeaway here is huge. Your goal as an investor isn't really to pick the perfect stock or time the market. It's to create a strategy that you find reasonable enough to stick with for decades. That endurance, that staying power, is what lets the incredible odds of long-term success actually work for you. Okay, so this sounds good in theory, right? But what does it actually look like in the real world? Let's check out a few common financial moves that might look irrational on paper, but are actually super reasonable. Take something like a home bias. A rational spreadsheet would tell you to diversify globally, but a lot of us invest mostly in our own country. Why? Because it's familiar. And if that familiarity helps you not to panic and sell, it's a perfectly reasonable choice. Or how about picking a few fun stocks? If spending a tiny bit of your portfolio on that scratches an itch and stops you from messing with your serious retirement money, that's a great trade-off. And holding extra cash, a computer would say that's inefficient. But if it helps you sleep soundly and keeps you from panic selling when the market drops, that cash is the most valuable asset you own.
And if you need the ultimate example of this whole idea, look no further than the godfather of rational investing himself, Jack Bogle. This is the man who created the index fund, the champion of low-cost, logical investing. But you know what? Even he wasn't perfectly rational all the time.
So get this. Bogle invested some of his own money into his son's mutual fund. And this was an active, high-fee fund, everything he publicly preached against. Why would he do that? Well, his quote says it all. It was for family. It was a reasonable, human thing to do. He chose to support his son over being perfectly consistent with his financial philosophy. He chose a relationship over being right. So all of this brings the focus right back around to you and to your own financial plan. It's time to ask yourself a few tough questions. Seriously, take a look at your strategy. Is it just designed to look perfect on paper, to get the highest possible score in some kind of simulation? Is it built for a robot? Or is it built for a real person? Does it account for your personality, for your fears, for the simple fact that you need to be able to sleep peacefully at night? Is it built for your actual life? And really, it all comes down to this one last question. At the end of the day, what is the goal here? Is it to be technically correct with every single decision you make, to prove that you're the smartest investor in the room? Or is it to use your money as a tool to build a secure, satisfying, and happy life? The answer to that question tells you everything. It tells you whether you should be chasing rational perfection or embracing what is simply reasonable.